We read Cracking the PM Interview by Jackie Bavaro and Gayle McDowell. Their background is mostly in product management, and we'll analyze their history a little bit. But first of all, Cracking the PM Interview is a book that focuses on what tools and frameworks do you need to ace your product management interview. Or if you want to learn a little bit more about how product management is executed at big tech companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, we're going to analyze the role of the product managers at those companies. We're also going to present a few frameworks that will help you analyze and answer any product related question that you might receive during the interview process. But at the same time, if you're a product manager and you have a challenge or you're trying to analyze a product, these frameworks will also help you in the execution of your role. So let's get started and analyze the top insights from the book. The first insight is that product managers have a vast variety of backgrounds, even within big tech companies. For example, Google tends to hire some MBAs as product managers, but they typically look for software engineers or individuals that have a master's in software engineering because they will understand the software development process and be better product owners. Amazon, on the other hand, hires a lot of product managers straight out of an MBA school because their problems and their products are completely different, and many times they're not software centric. Now, we are going to use a 7-step framework later on in the video. We're going to introduce it, where you can basically use that framework to solve any software related problems or supply chain related problems. Don't cross-contaminate products between companies. If you're interviewing at Microsoft or if you're applying to a job at Microsoft, do not apply with a PDF resume. Why? Because PDFs as a product is owned by Adobe. If you're applying to Microsoft or if you're interviewing at Microsoft, answer everything in Microsoft terms like Microsoft Word, etc. Same thing with, for example, if you're interviewing at Apple and they ask you an iPhone related question, keep in mind that the iPhone focuses on a particular tier of customers, and don't introduce Android features or Android thinking if it doesn't add value to your answer. The next insight that we discovered is that big tech companies and non-tech companies will throw technical questions, data analysis questions, and even puzzles at you. The reason they do this is because they're trying to understand how do you divide and conquer a problem, what kind of algorithms do you apply to better understand the data set or the intent of the consumer, where that data comes from. But more importantly, they want to see how you communicate your technical ideas. As a product manager, you have to convince engineers or engineering managers to add a feature to a product or to triage a feature higher in their calendar. Basically to make sure that they give it a higher priority. So when they're asking you these technical questions, there's no need for you to say, oh, I don't know how to program, I can't answer this question. Try to the best of your abilities to demonstrate your EQ, your communication skills, because as a product manager, you do have to communicate with a lot of engineers. Another great insight from the book is that great product managers typically have great side projects. If you're a product manager and you're passionate about technology, design, product development, whatever it may be, you will certainly have a side project where you're trying to put together or create a product or a tool. Bring that to the interview, have photos of it, take videos of it, have a demo ready. As soon as there's a way for you to introduce your side project, so long as it's relevant and it's of a high quality, introduce it in the interview. Why? Because the interviewer will assess your thinking process, your solution to a problem, how easily you can communicate the problem that you're trying to solve and why your solution adds value. So treat side projects as a perfectly fair question that you should introduce or try to answer by introducing during the interview process. As a product manager, if you don't have any technical backgrounds, that's fine, but do try to have solutions to problems that you see in your community, in your day-to-day routine. Try to make paper prototypes of products, hardware products, I imagine, that you think should exist. If you have a 3D printer and you can print them, that's even better. Have photos of those paper prototypes or 3D printed prototypes, because the interviewer is going to try to understand how you identified the problem to solve to begin with. What pains did you notice? As you're developing your product, try to apply human-centered design. There's lots of resources on the internet that can tell you how that works. And try to communicate to your interviewer what type of human-centered design techniques did you apply to your prototypes. That will also help explain your thinking as a product manager and how you can communicate the problems that you're trying to solve to engineers. A typical trap where even the most experienced product managers will fail at is when they're thinking of a product solution, they will think and come up with a solution that they themselves would want, but not what the end customer wants. If you're in a product management interview and you're asked, choose your favorite product and then improve it, people will typically choose an Apple product, let's say the iPhone, and they will try to improve it the way that they would want the iPhone to be. Let's say they read a lot of news on the iPhone, they will say, give it a better contrast or create some automatic contrast sensing technique based on the ambient light. And that is the wrong answer. And this is a trap that even the most senior product managers fall prey to. If you're asked to choose a product and improve it, or if you're a product manager and you're trying to improve a product, do not put the features that you yourself would want, but rather go to the customer, get data, analyze the data, and present reasons for why a feature needs to be added to a product. Now, if you're an extremely experienced product manager, maybe your personal connection to the product is so much that you already have all of that data and you can just instinctively say what would make the product better. But for most product managers, they think they're at that level and they're not. Let's start with an example. If someone asks you, how would you improve an elevator? A lot of product managers would say, oh, I would put the buttons outside of the elevator so people can say what floor they want to go before they step into the elevator, or I will add music to the elevator. They're focused on the elevator consumer experience. But another angle that they should be focused on is the amount of operational time that it takes to go to X floor. How do you minimize the travel time for the passenger of the elevator? If this is a 100-story building and it only has 3 elevator shafts, as a product manager, you need to know in the AM hours, like at 8 in the morning, 9, 10, 11 in the morning, how many people are going from the ground floor to which floor, and later in the afternoon at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., how many of them are moving back out. And so you need to then optimize the elevators so that you can minimize the number of elevator hops that an average user of that building takes. That's a mathematical problem to solve, and there's a lot of data, but most product managers will never analyze the elevator problem from that lens, from that angle. They will only look at the features that they themselves want in the limited experience that they have in an elevator. So if you're ever asked to improve a product, never just introduce your personal opinion. Try to analyze what are the layers that product has and start from the one that's furthest away from your experience so that the interviewer can better understand that you have a complete exhaustive view of the ecosystem of a product. We're now going to introduce the 7-step framework that you can apply to analyze any problem. You should use this framework with the following caveat. Some companies want product managers to be bold, to come in and completely shift the product. Other companies want product managers to come in and tippy-toe do micro innovations until they see a result. So based on what the angle of the company is, keep that in mind when you use this 7-step framework. But when you get any product management related problem, try to clarify the problem first. Make sure you fully understand it from all angles. Don't just focus on the experience that you have of it, but every angle surrounding that problem. Provide some structure to your problem analysis. For example, in the elevator situation, you can divide the problem into the building, the architecture and the building, the shafts, the elevator can itself, the entry point to the elevator. Try to provide some MECE structure, some mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive structure to the way that you present the problem. Identify the users for each one of those stages of the problem. Identify who is the end user, the stakeholder, the buyer, the seller, the decision maker, every user for every aspect of the problem that you're trying to solve. In the case of the elevator, yes, you have the passenger, the rider of the elevator, but you also have the company that installed it, the architect that made it, the manufacturer that supplied the elevator, the software designer that optimizes the algorithm of the elevator, the earthquake assessment inspector that comes every year to make sure that the elevator is good given the codes of the city. There are at least 100 stakeholders and users that interact and judge and analyze that elevator. Then report your customer needs. Present what each stakeholder, customer, user, investor, purchaser, decision maker wants from that product. Prioritize significant user issues. Prioritize what are the main problems in the sense that you have to triage them. So you have a great picture of what is most important with the elevator, where are the bottlenecks, what is the lowest hanging fruit. Try to put the problems and the solutions on a matrix where you can say, this is the cheapest problem, the lowest cost problem to solve, but the least painful as well. Or this is the most painful problem that is the cheapest to solve, the least costly to solve. Now, also take into account how much time it takes to solve that problem. So for every problem that you have, try to analyze the cost associated with improving or solving that problem, the time that it takes to solve that problem, and the amount of pain that each of the stakeholders experience with that problem. Once you have all of that, design features and evaluate the trade-offs. Once you know the cost, the timing of each project, once you know how much effort it's going to take to solve the problem, then come up with the design solutions, triage which solution has to be implemented first, second, third, so on and so forth, so that your solution is completely exhaustive. After you have that, present a final report as to how you aim to solve said problem. This 7-step framework can be applied to software problems, to hardware problems, supply chain problems, because it's abstract in its own essence. But as you are using it, keep in mind that you need to know how long it takes to solve the problem, how much it will cost, and how much happiness it will bring to the stakeholder that has the problem. During the behavior part of your interview, and also if you're just a product manager, people will ask you these type of questions. Tell us a story when you had a great leadership experience, tell us of a great failure of yours, etc., etc. You need, as a product manager, you need a table or a matrix that basically delineates all the behaviors that people typically try to analyze of you and all the experiences that you have. So these questions will typically focus on your successes, your challenges, your failures, teamwork, leadership. And then for each one of these behaviors or categories, you need to have stories related to your first job, to your second job, to your side projects, etc., etc. Because during the interview process, they will be analyzing your resume and they will tell you, well, at this specific job, tell me of a failure, or at this other job, tell me of a success. So you won't necessarily be able to cherry pick a story. They'll try to break it so that you can't preemptively have these things memorized, but you can if you have a matrix that summarizes everything for you. There's this STAR or SAR methodology that basically describes that you should explain the situation, explain the tasks that you had. If you had no tasks, you can skip it. So it's situation, tasks, the actions that you took, and the results that you generated. Try to keep your answer in that framework. Do not go off tangents and explain some personal anecdote, some personal life story. Just answer the situation, task, action, and result. How succinct you are in your response is extremely important. So we've created a tiny framework here, or like a diagram, so that you can see that you basically start the thesis of your story, like the nugget. What is it about that story that's so important that you're trying to share, and make sure that that is relevant, obviously, to the question at hand. Explain the context and the situation that you were in. What kind of data did you acquire? What kind of analysis did you do? What was your 7-step framework breakdown? What were the solutions that you were considering? How did you assess the cost, the time, the happiness, outcome? And then finally, what are the actions that you choose? How did you end up triaging those actions? And what are the results that you experience? For example, if someone were to ask me, tell me of a time when you improved the product, I would be very concise. I would say, well, there was this product that had low conversion. We wanted to increase the conversion. So I looked at the landing page and I noticed that XYZ things were missing. I did a customer survey. I understood that they were looking at X particular value proposition rather than other value propositions. How did I measure this? Because I screen record what they were highlighting as they were going to this webpage. Then I optimized for that, and the results was that we had a 5% conversion improvement. That wraps up our book summary of Cracking the PM Interview. We have hundreds of different book summaries that we've analyzed that you have access to. Thank you for watching, and until next time.